Emna. Okay, welcome to Parashat Bamidbar, Parashat Hashavua. We're starting a new Sefer, and in the Parasha, we're talking about the Kedusha of the tribe of Levi, and as choosing the tribe of Levi as, right away when the Kadosh Baruch Hu tells them the first step is, he tells Moshe Rabbeinu to take the Levim, to take the Levites, instead of the firstborns in Am Yisrael, and then they're going to substitute them. So the story of switching the firstborns in Bnei Levi, in the Levites, takes a tremendous chunk, and it's a very important event. And that has to do with some kind of a lottery that was going on, and also finding a solution for few of the Bechorot that they couldn't find a Levite to substitute them. Now, the commitment of switching the Bechorot or substituting the Bechorot are the firstborn, has in it one ingredient that kind of been pushed to the side and somewhat forgotten. And that is what the Pasuk says, Ve'ed behemat ha-Leviim, and the animals, the behemah of the Levites, tachat kol bechor bivehemat bnei Israel. Also, the animals of the Leviim, instead of any bechor, any firstborn, in the animals of the rest of the Jews. So that commitment to exchange the holiness of the animals in the animals of the Leviim is mentioned twice in the proximity to the commitment to switching between the Leviim themselves and the firstborn of Bnei Israel. And if you look at verse 41 and 45 over there. So if you're going to look at what we call Pshat Psukim, whatever the simple text that comes out, it seems that as much as the Levites, Bnei Levi, were sanctified, all of them, in the Kedusha, in the holiness of the Bechorot, and not only the firstborn of Shevet Levi. You would think that, we'll substitute, Bechorot for Bechorot, firstborn for firstborn. However, this is not the case. The whole Kedusha of the Bechorot, of the firstborn, was substituted completely with everyone in Bnei Israel. Now, in Masechet Bechorot, in Tractate Bechorot, there is a great discussion regarding what exactly took place there and the magnitude of this substitution and its details. Is it, for example, talking about a Petach Chamo? Petach Chamo is a firstborn donkey, or also in a firstborn of a kosher animal. Also, we learn over there that the Bechorot of Behemah, of an animal, did not need any kind of a lottery or any kind of an activity over there, and therefore every baby, not goat, lamb, sheep of a Levite could, in potential, redeem many Petach Chamo, many firstborn donkeys of Am Yisrael. And of course, we have to wonder on the true meaning of this substitution that seems in a way a little bit artificial. It doesn't seem, something is not, it's not really done appropriately, it might seem. It's like we don't really count, we don't really pay attention to details, and so on and so forth. So if for the Leviim, the meaning of the substitution is quite understood, right? They substitute the firstborns of Bnei Israel in Avodat HaKodesh, in the practice or the of whatever is the services of the temple, right? So why do we also, on top of that, or in addition to that, need to so-called switch the animals the Bechorim in the animals of the Levim. What's so special about the animal of a Levi, and what's so holy about an animal of a Levi than a regular animal? I mean, an animal is an animal. So Rav Hirsch answers this question. Rav Hirsch says, excuse me, and we already said and established that a donkey is what we call a beast of burden, right? He carries stuff, right, and he represents a type of possessions that could be moved from one place to another. That's why you put it on the donkey, to take it from this place to that place. And the kedusha and the holiness of the Peter Chamor, of the firstborn donkey, really expresses something else. This is another idea. It comes to tell us that any kind of possession that is steady, that is not movable, right, of the family is acquired to it. And this is the meaning of when we're talking about the Pidyon Peter Chamor, the redemption of the firstborn donkey, by a baby sheep that was given to the Kohen, right? And there's no, and we have to understand that there is no value. By doing so, we understand that there's no value and no meaning, and pay attention to that, to possessions that you don't do anything with. In other words, it's stationary. Stationary doesn't mean like a house or something that you have and you don't do any use with it. It's pointless. And the only meaning that he has is in that matter that if it becomes something that is alive, in other words, with the personality of the, with the living aspect of men, right? You take this element, and therefore you use it in the appropriate manner. And what's more appropriate than to use it for holy purposes? So, according to the words of Rav Hirsch, the redemption of the firstborn donkey puts in the center the donkey itself, that he is in a way the leaser of all animals, right? In terms of the work that we give him all the dirty job, right? He carries stuff up, he guards the belongings of the person, everything that is of the person he takes care of. So it's like the least of, it's not so important, in terms of the animal. Now, the object, the utensils, the vessels of a person are in a way, and we spoke about it many, many times in the past, are an expansion of his own body, his own personality, and his own neshama. That's why the requirement of Bal Tachmod is so important. It comes in the Ten Commandments, and it comes in a certain order. You should not go, first of all, for the closest thing to a man, that's going to be his wife. So that's his part of the neshama. And yet everything that a person has a part of his neshama in it. So when a person understands that, he understands that as much as there is holiness in his neshama, there is also holiness in his utensils and his vessels and anything else that he has. And the expression for that, it comes really alive in the sanctification, in the holiness of the Peter Chamor, the firstborn of the donkey. We substitute this holiness in an animal of the Levi. That also is very important, but that requires another explanation, because it seems that the Levi, now on the other hand, the Levi needs to seem, because we do that, because we substitute this in that. Now, the Levi himself needs to understand, needs to comprehend that he himself needs to see himself as serving in the temple, right, in the Mikdash, not only in the spiritual, intellectual aspect of himself, right, with his morals and so on. Also, he needs to pay attention to what he has, the means for his survival, the means for his existence, also get that level of holiness, and he needs to be aware of that. And in a way, we have hints for that ourselves when we say, for example, "Lo linhog bizyon be'ochlim." In other words, don't treat food in a disgraceful manner, because you start thinking about it, what the importance of food, and there is the expression of or the commandment of not to destroy things, right? Lo le'ashchit, not to destroy things, and so on and so forth. But the Levi needs to really understand that everything that he has, because of this substitution, is a mean for a kedusha, and it belongs to a holy side. So the conclusion from the word, from the explanation of Rav Hirsch is, and paying attention, that the mikdash, the temple, is not only a place that we worship God. In other words, you worship God not only in the mikdash. It's a special place, but that's not the only place. The Leviim, right, them and everything that they have become a part of this templeism, right, in anywhere that they go. Everything that they do is dedicated to Hashem. Everything that they do is a part of Avodat Hashem. And as much as everything that they do is a part of Avodat Hashem, therefore all their vessels are parts of the temple. And it is a very, very important point to understand that. In that way, in that manner, if they understand, even the behemah, even their animals, become an instrument, become a vehicle in the place of when there's object and there's belongings. That itself also becomes a kli avodah, a kli sharet b'kodesh. It's a part of the holiness. And that idea of the stature of the Leviim as having a different stature altogether, different I wouldn't say caste, but similar to that, also comes to a very significant point, is probably that idea, we can run with that idea, that the Leviim don't have a chelek ve'nachala in the Holy Land. In other words, they don't have an estate, and they don't have a part in the Holy Land. They don't. So why is that? Because everything that they do needs to be dedicated to Hashem. So if you work the land, it's very hard to us. We spoke about the Kabbalah. Remember, we spoke about this during this week. We explained these things. If you're becoming too earthy, it's very hard to elevate yourself spiritually. Now, the Leviim themselves were commanded to give up on their part of the land, in that land that the Jewish existence is dependent on. In other words, a nation with no land is not a nation. And we need to understand that. So they gave up that part. And the Leviim need to give up their existence in terms of going to do business and to go to work and so on and so forth. And their existence was dependent on donations that the nation itself had set aside from their belongings as a sign of surrendering to Hashem and so on and so forth. So they had to do so. The people had to give it up. And why did they have to give it up? So the Leviim will also have a part in maintaining the identity of Am Yisrael, and that is Limud Torah ve'kiyuma, learning the Torah and make sure that the Torah is actually alive and it's vibrant. And this is the obligation that lays upon the Shevet Levi, to the Levites. They are what we call Ovdei HaMikdash. They work in the temple with their blood, sweat, and tears. Bechol levavam, bechol nafshecha, bechol meodecha. That's what they do. And it is a tremendous thing to ask somebody to give up a normal way of living, because we say, I'm going to make a living. I have to go work. HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to Levi, no, that's not going to work like this. And if you think that the only one who maintaining that identity of the land is those who work the land and go to the army and serve the army, comes the Torah and teaches us, no, that's not the case. Even those who don't have the land, they don't have a part of the land because they were commanded. Even those, they have something very, very important in that. Now, if Eretz Israel, the land of Israel, is the body, doing the mitzvot in Eretz Israel is the neshama. Learning Torah in Eretz Israel, that's a higher level of the neshama. And we need to understand that the specialty, as the Mishnah says, of the land of Israel is not by itself. The kedusha of Eretz Israel, the holiness of the land, is not because it is holy by itself without us doing anything, as the Mishnah says. The Mishnah says the holiness of the land comes because we do mitzvot hatluyot ba'aretz. We do the mitzvot that are associated with the land. The kedusha is being bestowed upon by our actions, not by itself. Again, the only thing that is holy by itself is God. Everything else needs to be acquired or delivered or bestowed upon or applied on and so on and so forth. And that is something fantastic. I mean, it's a great idea. So the Rashash understands or concludes from this overall concept of that includes the Leviim and their possessions as holy. He concludes the magnitude that is being asked for the Leviim, the request that was laid upon the Leviim, in other words, bechol nafsham ubechol ma'odam, with all their might and all their possession. Bechol nafshecha ubechol me'odecha. Me'odecha is your money, and nafshecha is all your emunah. So now, applying this kedusha or transferring this holiness from the small details of it to the big details of it is again being described in our parasha. And that reminds me something else. The kedusha that exists in Am Yisrael also exists in the behemoth, in the animals. Transferring the kedusha, the holiness, to something a greater shape, right? By the Leviim, really expose the fact that there are people that they themselves are a representation of holiness themselves. They are the phenomena of holiness themselves. As much as the animals of Israel, of the Jew, there is one bechor, one firstborn that you have to redeem, but the animals of the Leviim is padui meikara. They don't have to bring to separate it. It's already redeemed. The same thing when we do pidyon ben. A Leviim don't do it. It's already redeemed. Now, that the similarity is not only in relations to that lays upon between the holiness of the Jews and the holiness of the Leviim. We could also compare between the holiness of men and animal, as the pasuk says, and that phenomena that we see by human, is the same phenomenon that applies by animals itself. The similarity that we have between man and beast really helps us to understand the concept of kedusha, of holiness, and to show us that the Leviim themselves are like a kli kodesh, like holy vessels. They're, as we said, they are asked to give up on all their desires, their personal desires, on their personal needs in terms of that matter. And from this matter, they are compared to the animal, to their animal, that is assigned to the holy temple, to the work on the holy temple. As much as this animal, in a way, is assigned to this, so are you as assigned to that. Now, in our parasha, we discuss also the job of the Leviim, and we could really see that job is divided into many parts and many things. So, for example, there is the carrying over the Mishkan and all the tabernacle and all the other stuff with it. You know, the menorah, the candelabra, and so on and so forth. Then they have another assignment is taking apart and put it apart. It's like IKEA, you know, take apart, put it apart of all the of the mishkan, of the tent, when they're going on a journey and when they're coming back from the journey, or when they settled in down from the journey. Guarding the mishkan, guarding the mishkan. This is not for nothing, by the way, because it says v'shamru haleviim et mishmeret mishkan ha'edut. And pay attention, this is key. And the Levites will guard the guard of the tabernacle of testimony, the edut. So if you're going to look at those tasks that the Torah assigns Bnei Levi, really reveals that we are talking about tasks that in a certain aspect really are contradicting. In one hand, we need to take apart, and then we need to put it together. In another hand, we have to carry it and we have to guard it. So, you know, it's a little bit conflicting. So if we are talking about taking it apart and putting it together, that symbolizes the essential need in rejuvenation all the time. It is a daily need of taking apart and putting together of every basic element, in a way, even of your life. In other words, don't take anything for granted. Sit down and take it apart. Take it apart, and that's what basically what we do at night when you do cheshbon nefesh. When you say, okay, I'm ochel for everybody, chatati, and so on and so forth. You take everything apart, and then you're going to put it together. Next morning, you're going to start it again. And it is something that we have to have this rejuvenation. The lack of rejuvenation is a sign of spiritual decay. Now, this action of taking it apart and putting it together, we could take, for example, you know, many people who do the trade have it. For example, you have you know, construction people that take apart a building, they put a building. You have plumbers that take apart, they put it apart, mechanics, and so on and so forth. Sometimes they need to, let's say, take apart a mechanic, they take apart the whole entire engine in order to remove some engine mount or something like that, and then they put it back together, and nobody would notice that the whole thing was taken apart. This is also, for example, what chemists do, or physicians do, or engineers do, and so on and so forth. Their job is really to identify the basic elements of whatever structure it is. Now, it doesn't make a difference if it's a structure of a bridge, or reverse engineering of some alien machine, or understanding the structure of molecules. Okay. Now, what do? They identify the basic elements. They isolate different variables. They expose the elements in which that natural process is being put together, and then they build it all back together. They put it back together by using a certain code that they were able to reveal from this process, which is fascinating stuff. And that's what we do. Now, that is also, we have it somewhere else. We have it in Yeshiva, when we learn Torah. People that learn in Yeshiva really know that concept of taking stuff apart and building it together. We know it very well, right? There are many sugiyot, many different topics that we learn that you really need to get down to the bottom of things. Otherwise, you're not going to get it. In other words, you have to take the core idea, strip it to the basic, and then you start building it all together. And you really have to take part after part after part after part until you get the core of the problem of that Talmudic concept that you're dealing with. From that point, now is the way back. Now we're putting it back together. We start to building it by layers until we have the big structure, which is a wonderful structure of understanding the topic and so on and so forth. And now this is shining and it's clear, and all of a sudden you feel like you're getting something. It could be a topic that thousands of generations have, of years people dealt with it, but when you take it apart and put it together, it's like brand new. And that's something that we have to associate, and you see maybe where I'm going here. So this task of that we are talking about is not only on people who sit down in Bet Medrash, right? It's also on a person, for example, who is posek halacha, a rabbi is posek halacha, right? Now, people come and ask, and then so on and so forth, and they have we have new technology and new challenges and so on and so forth. So what do? How did the Posek deals with that? He takes the whole thing apart until he starts finding ways that, from the current question that you came up, he says, oh, that is similar to this one. So he puts it to the side. And this is similar to this one. And this was brought in somewhere else like this. And then he puts it all together until he gets a halacha. So for people to come and claim that the Torah does not rejuvenate and the Torah is old and the Torah is not new, I can tell you, besides the stupid empty statement that the person made, he also reveals something about himself, that he's a complete ignorant person that probably never learned anything and never dealt with this like this, taking apart and understanding how to write it. If you look at the Tshuvot of Rav Ovadia Yosef or any other of these people, Rav Moshe Feinstein, any of these people, you'll see how they take it apart all the way down to the verse in the Torah, and then they put it all back together in an article that, believe me, is that any judge in the Supreme Court will be very, very happy to write something of that sort. If you look at Rav Ovadia, the way he writes, it's like it's fantastic. It's beautiful stuff. So that also, we need to know the halacha, we need to know what reality, and we understand everything like this, and what's the conclusion, the halachic conclusion. That is also melechet piruk ve'arkava, taking stuff and put it back together. That is also a part of what the Leviim were requested. In order to be able to put everything, to take apart and put it all together, they always have to be aware of what is happening around them. What type of a soil are they in? Is there a storm coming? There's no storm coming. Is this, and so on and so forth. They need to be aware all the time. And we learned this from them. Now let's talk about carrying and guarding. And then another obligation of the Levites is really to guard the Mishkan. The same thing is in Bet HaMikdash. There was also Levim who were Shomrim. They were guards, right? And to carry all the holy vessels. After they took everything apart, right? Now there were those who were in charge of carrying the stuff and guarding them. And what we call guarding the Edut. And these are the Levim. Now, and not only the Levim are holy vessels, so are many of our Bnei Torah in our generation, which God had gave them tremendous mental intellect powers. I mean, really huge brains. And they choose what we call Chaye Torah, life of Torah, life of holiness. They will ask, just like the Levim, to give up on their own personal desires, to their basic needs from this. And from this aspect, we compare them, or we do call them a Kli Kodesh. We call them holy vessels. And this Kli Kodesh, HaMeshemshim BaMikdash LaAvodat HaKodesh, those people who are sit down and dedicate their life to learn Torah, become holy vessels, are the vessels in which what we're doing, like a menorah, like a candelabra. They bring light to our lives just like that. They turn from let's say a personality or persona to a symbol. They have been turning from regular people to people with a job, with a specific important duty. In their way, the way they live their life, their way of living life is completely dedicated to spiritual growth and spiritual action. They are the concentrated force of holiness in Am Yisrael. That essence of holiness is present in small dosages in the rest of Am Yisrael, in the rest of the Jews, which are also the belongings of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? And they're also a part of his holy vessels. However, as we said before, there's no value, there's no meaning to possessions which you don't do anything with them, right? Unless it becomes something alive. Remember when we talked about exchanging the animals, unless it becomes a part of the living entity of men. and it is being used to holy, jobs or to holy purposes in the temple. That's why, Rabotai, having the money in the bank is, I understand. Nobody has this emunah to that level. But we must support, and especially during these times that we are at, we have to support Torah institutions. And we have to support people who dedicated their life to learn Torah, and people who who gave everything to learn Torah. These people are Shomrei Ha'edut B'Mishmeret HaKodesh. These are the people who guard the testimony in the holy guard, in the holy vessels that we are required to, as they were in the temple. Those people who are the Klei Kodesh, who dedicated their life to Torah, are the Shevet Levi of our times. As the Rambam writes, that these are the people who, Rabotai, are exempt from going to the army, are exempt from paying taxes. These are the people in which we should pick the tab for them, because they are doing something that we are not doing, and that is becoming a holy vessel. Every Jew could become, but not every Jew wants. So this analogy that we are talking about already before, and we mentioned it, really also has some kind of a basis, and it's already established in the Torah itself. When it talks about Mishmeret Mishkan HaEdut, the guard of the holy, of the tabernacle of testimony, as the Natziv says in the Spirush the Torah, and I'm quoting, it says, V'yesh lefaresh od, and we need to explain it even further. Dehu hosafat bi'ur ledekameh, hainu od, often shmira chitzonit. We have to guard it externally. The Mishkan HaEdut, the tabernacle, hainu koach haTorah, that power of the Torah, haya shomer et Israel. That's what guards the Jews. As they say, more than the Jews keep the Shabbat keeps the Jews. So here is also, Mishkan HaEdut is the koach of the Torah, is the power of the Torah, and that guards Am Israel. Ve'ata, the Natziv writes, Tziva Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu commended, שגם הלוויים משמרו אותה משמרת של משכן העדות. Now it's not only that the Torah guards us, we also need to guard the Torah, because that's a testimony. And what does it mean? היינו שיתעסקו בתורה. That it's not enough that they're standing physically guard there. Guard the who's going to come and rob it? I mean, who? Jesse James. Nobody's going to come and rob Bet HaMikdash. Okay? So, but not only the Shmira Chitzonit, not only external guard, it says also they need to learn the Torah. Asek, in other words, their business is the Torah. Esek is business. Their business is the Torah. Ubischutam, in the merit, Iyu Israel Nishmarim. The guard of Am Israel, the Shmira, the protection of Am Israel is dependent on those who learn Torah. Not just on buying F-15 and F-35s. Is first of all and most of all learning and learning Torah and doing your business in Torah. Kmo al yedei koach mishmeret ha'edut. Just as they were guard by mishmeret ha'edut. That's the Torah is today. And in his words, the Natziv adds a tremendous depth to the meaning of learning Torah. How important it is to learn Torah. How difficult this melacha is of learning Torah and sitting on the bench of the Torah and learning all the time and understanding and not being satisfied with something superficial. That today is maybe the root of our problem in terms of everything that we do. We don't want to go to anything deep. We want everything superficial. But that superficiality does not work when you learn Torah. You have to get down to the bottom of things. So these are the people who sit down, and then they teach the halachot to the people. And when they teach those halachot to the people, they are the ones who make the kiyuma mitzvah. Because of them, the Torah will be mitkayem. As we say, Lule Toratcha, if it wasn't for your Toratcha Sha'ashuai, that I'm rejoicing on your Torah, as avadeti ba'avoni. If it wasn't the Torah that is my pride and joy, I would be lost with my sin. So at the end of things, Rabotai, learning the Torah is more than just, intellectual property, intellectual exercise. Is dealing with the genetic code of us as Am Yisrael. What defines us as Am Yisrael is the Torah. And the Torah is the lab in which we take apart and we put it back together when we keep and we guard the whole entire nation. Our nation is not a nation unless we learn and guard the Torah. Our nation does not have a right to settle down in the land of Israel if it wasn't for the Torah. This is how it is important to understand that. And this is how important it is for all of us to take a part of that. Just as the Rambam says, not only Shevit Levi Bilvad, ela kol mi shechafetz, any person that wants. And Rabotai, that's why we must support and guard the Torah, each one to his ability in which God gave him. If a person can help to support the Torah in terms of he's going to be the tomech, he's going to support the Torah in terms of supporting it, gives it financial thing, well, let it be it. He's still not exempt from learning, but that's his support. If another person has the ability of teaching, he should teach other people and use the Torah to teach other people, and not to look for great rewards. That's a tremendous chut. Each and every one, if a person is good by learning, let him good by learning. Each and every one of us can do so. But I did show, I think, to all of you, as the Mahachu writes, the Gemara writes, if a person does not see Siman Bracha in 5 years in Limudo, ein lo roeh yoter Siman Bracha. 5 years, if you learn Torah, you didn't see anything, it's not good. And I think I prove it to all of you, that if you learn less than 5 years, you see magic happening to you every single day you learn Torah. If you look at where you were 3 years ago, or where you were 10 years ago, you would say, Ribono Shalom, I can't believe that one day I'll be here. I never thought it's possible. So that's what we need to do. We need to be mechazek tomchei Torah. And those of us who don't like people who support the Torah, or look down upon people who learn the Torah, we should reprimand them and tell them you are wrong. The whole existence of Am Yisrael is because of those people. These are our commandos. These are the people who deserve a badge of honor. These are the people who makes us into a nation. And we should not make people who learn Torah life difficult and miserable, or look down on them. On the contrary, we should look upon them as we look upon the Leviim. And that's why the Leviim were always praised, and they were held to high esteem, and they had to wear certain clothes and so on and so forth. Today, the Bnei Torah are the Leviim of old, and the Yeshivot are, but the Batei Mikdash are the holy temples in which we sacrifice our desires, we sacrifice everything, and we dedicate it all to Hashem. The first of all, the shiur should be l'refuah shlema of Yona ben, Jesse, Yona ben who? Yona ben something.
Ben Batsheva.
Ben Batsheva. And to the Hatzlacha of Fegel Sarah bat Reuven Lev, and Rachel Chaya bat Sarah, and Mike ben Miriam, and also our dear Talmud Shlomo, that is a tremendous help for us, and all the Bachurim, each and every one to their contribution one way or another to support and help the yeshiva one way or another.
And 2 questions.
1 second. And to all of those who are also in great need, if you have any questions, not for you, Jesse, but if you have any questions, you can ask us at rabbigaon@gmail.com. You can check us on Yeshiva at yeshiva.etzion.com. We have on the website there. If you want to be a partner in the Yeshiva, you can go to the donate and PayPal over there. Any other ways is also acceptable. Check us on Instagram, Facebook, but more important, if you are in the neighborhood please join us physically once we are able to come back. And hopefully together, all of us will be able to go as free people to our land, to our homeland, to the motherland, to sit down and learn Torah without any disturbance. And we should see the glory of Hashem. Amen. Shabbat Shalom. Yossi.